Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman may proceed.
I think it's important today to begin by taking a step back, provide some important context about the bill we are considering today, and reestablish some important facts. Election administration and the way elections work is a complicated process. For most of us, this experience typically consists of showing up, casting a ballot, and then digesting news coverage of results. Very few people realize everything that goes on behind the scenes. But recently, as election administration has come into the forefront, there's a lot of people who all of a sudden seem to think that they're an expert on the subject. This includes many of the people in these buildings and in the press. Many of those folks have never been on the ground in election offices across the country and couldn't tell the difference between an e-poll book and a high-speed ballot scanner. Yet, they know they're right. This has led to all sorts of rumors, narratives, and misinformation across the political spectrum to percolate within our society. And that has caused people to lose faith in our elections. This is a huge problem. I've spent the past few years traveling the country to learn about different state election processes and have met with countless Republican and Democrat election administrators. We've learned about the checks and balances in place. Free and fair elections are the bedrock of our democracy, and we must ensure people can have faith in elections, in election processes and outcomes in order for our democracy to continue to thrive. Unfortunately, one false narrative that has been pushed by my colleagues on the other side is that Republican members of Congress are election subverters or deniers trying to overthrow elections because of an objection to a state's electoral slate on January 6th. This has been fueled by members of the media who don't understand the subject. They are claiming that this particular action was unprecedented and an affront to democracy. However, so many of them, including powerful committee chairs that are in power today, have objected in the past. In fact, Democrats have objected to every single Republican presidential win in the 21st century. Another false narrative is that somehow the legal actions taken by the Trump campaign, the rhetoric of former President Trump, Republican members of Congress voting to object to a state's electors, and the illegal actions of many people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th were all connected in some kind of mass conspiracy by Republicans to stage a coup. These two narratives are now presented on a daily basis as though they are fact, but that is quite simply not true. The fact of the matter is, there are long-standing legal frameworks in place to adjudicate disputes in election outcomes that have been utilized regularly, regardless of party. There's not enough time today to go through all of them, but the point is these processes have existed for a long time and they are used frequently and often by candidates of all political stripes. There are checks, balances, and safeguards woven in throughout the system. The goal of every election framework is to ensure the person who takes the oath of office is the one who actually won. That's true in the states, in the courts, and here in Congress. The best news of all is these systems have worked. At the end of the day, the outcomes were exactly as they should have been. It's why people can and should have faith in our election system. This isn't to say that our system is perfect. There's always room for improvement. But unfortunately, that's not what is happening here today. The Electoral Count Act has been in place for over a century and directly implements constitutional provisions. Members of all political parties have exercised their rights under the provisions of that law to raise constitutional objections to state electoral slates if they determine something may be improper. This is not an affront to democracy. Frankly, it's democracy in action. In fact, Democrats have quite an extensive history of objecting to the electoral count. I'd like to insert into the record a list of over 80 Democrats denying election results, including many chairs.
Without objection.
Thank you. Including people like Chairperson Maxine Waters, Chairman Benny Thompson, Representative Jamie Raskin, and many others here today. And again, the result in all of these cases was that our system worked. The House and Senate did what they were supposed to do, heard the objections, disposed of them properly, and ultimately certified the election as originally presented. Objecting does not make you an election subverter or denier. Each member of Congress has a constitutional duty to do what they think is best for their constituents. At the same time Democrats were accusing Republicans of undermining democracy, they themselves were attempting to overturn the results of a duly certified election in Iowa's 2nd congressional district. The challenger, Democrat Rita Hart, even said that she brought the contest to a partisan committee in D.C. instead of Iowa courts, quote, in order to get the result we need, end quote. This was after the state of Iowa followed their normal and lawful process throughout the election for Iowa, too. The votes were counted, recounted by a bipartisan recount board, multiple bipartisan recount boards, and duly certified. Yet this majority orchestrated having their candidate bypass state courts and instead attempted to utilize the House itself to steal a congressional seat to boost their slim majority. This was the single biggest act of election subversion that occurred in the 2020 election cycle. And it was carried out by the same people here today claiming that Republicans are a threat to democracy. Fast forward to today. Democrats are once again attempting to move a major piece of legislation that overhauls a key piece of our election system in a partisan manner behind closed doors. They didn't hold a hearing or a markup on this bill. They didn't release legislative text until 24 hours before it was considered in the Rules Committee. They didn't consult Republicans on the Committee of Jurisdiction, despite repeated overtures to work together on discussions of this important issue, all rebuffed. Why rush such a significant piece of legislation when the next presidential certification won't happen for over 2 years? Well, it's pretty simple, Madam Speaker. The midterm elections are just weeks away, and the Democrats are desperately trying to talk about their favorite topic, former President Trump. As someone who voted to certify Joe Biden as president and who recently lost a primary race to a candidate endorsed by the former president, I believe what House Democrats and the 1-6 committee are doing is irresponsible and wrong. They've allowed their dislike for one man, President Trump, to cloud their judgment and guide their actions, no matter the consequences to this institution or the Constitution that they claim to want to uphold. It's time that we started being honest with ourselves and with the American people. And the facts are, the president and his campaign filing legal challenges in state and federal courts around the country was not improper nor unprecedented. Everyone is entitled to their day in court. Those suits were considered by judges and ultimately rejected. The process worked. The rhetoric of former President Trump following the 2020 election was highly inappropriate. Republican members of Congress objecting to a state's slate of electors is not election subversion or unprecedented. The actions of the individuals who attacked the Capitol on January 6th was wrong. Those individuals should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Democrats have just as long of a history as Republicans of challenging and questioning elections, including attempting to overturn a duly certified congressional election in Iowa. This is not a partisan issue, and the processes in place have worked. In closing, I will just reiterate that people's faith in our elections is critical to the long-term success of our democracy. It's time for House Democrats to quit playing partisan political games and pushing false narratives just to preserve their own power. It is incumbent upon all of us to be honest and work in good faith and serve the American people, restore faith in our elections, and protect our democracy. And I reserve the balance of my time.